started smiling a lot more after that. Tisana, Lamashtu's priestess, didn't remain in the king's service for long. One night, she just disappeared from the castle and set off for the kingdom's borders, preaching to anyone who would listen and granting the needy the blessing of the Mother of Monsters. Having participated in Lamashtu's ritual, Olika gave birth to a strong and healthy baby. Sadly, the child grew into an unruly and violent adolescent. Having maimed a peer at just 10 years of age, the boy escaped to the Gnarl Marches, fleeing the rage of a mob that tore his mother to pieces instead. No one knows what happened to the lad, but legends of Lamashtu's child, who sometimes kills lost travelers and sometimes leads them to safety, are passed on by word of mouth throughout the area. Breinhardt became a loyal ally and trade partner of the kingdom, and Darwin himself had been seen as a frequent guest in the capital. The elegant monarch of the neighboring kingdom has broken many hearts at court. After his visits, many young guards and servants have been seen staring through windows, sighing wistfully about something. The Fae took a fancy to the kingdom, feeling totally at home here. They often play various pranks, but they never do any serious harm. Falcos and Teresia managed to restore the magic forest. Once freed of the anger of the scythe tree, people returned to the abandoned village, and it became a haven of friendship between the Fae and ordinary people, just like old times. The lizard folk of the Longtail tribe returned to live on the shores of Candlemere, but they couldn't return to their ancient way of life. Living alongside people, the lizard folk adopted their behaviors, habits, and even religion. More and more of the Longtail tribe pray not to the spirits of their ancestors, but to Erastil or Gorum. They even began to forget their original language. I hope someone writes down their songs and legends before they all sink into oblivion. A delegation of wizards from Absalom and other areas appeared in the kingdom one day, asking for permission to examine the lair of the Lich Farniris the Thoughtful. After completing their research, the wizards spent a long time thanking the king for freeing the world of that monster. In their opinion, he'd been capable of causing the end of the world, maybe even 2 worlds. Evindra settled down in the Tuskwater and visits the capital often. She became a friend to the people of the kingdom, helping them and teaching them how to treat the lake life with care. Parents allow their children to swim in the Tuskwater at any time, day or night, secure in the knowledge that she'll look out for them. After Nyrissa's curse was lifted, the maimed face of the last defaced sister began healing, little by little. She still keeps her distance from people, but she's always glad to see the king. After the victory, the storyteller abandoned his affairs and began spending a lot of time alone in contemplation. He eventually bid farewell to the king and left his lands. But I suspect the inhabitants of Golarion haven't heard the last of this mysterious traveler, for his own story is hardly finished. The ancient artifacts gathered by the king built the foundation of a museum collection that has become famous even in far-off Absalom. Amiri remained a pariah to her native tribe, but she stayed close friends with Nylak, who ruled the Six Bears wisely and taught them to survive in the unfamiliar plains and cities. The restless barbarian would often travel for long stretches of time, but sooner or later she would always return to her old friends, bragging about new scars and recounting new feats, many of which Nylak immortalized in song. Valerie stayed to serve the king, and to this day she continues to be a muse to many people. Not just bards and admirers, but to warriors as well. Honest and resilient, Valerie is not just famous for her feats in battle, but also for her patience and kindness, which she says the king helped her discover within herself. Harrim became famous, respected by dwarves throughout our kingdom as well as our neighbors, even as far as the 5 Kings Mountains. He's often been asked to help out or teach others, and he's never denied anyone, despite his grumbling. Some people even listen to his preaching, Lucky for us, there's a lot less howling about the end of the world now, and more wise words of moderation and humility. Not all of his disciples turned to Grotus, but everyone took away something useful from his teachings. Jaethal spent some time at the king's court, but she then left to do whatever it was her new goddess required. She must have become a great inquisitor for Pharasma, as no one would know the ways of the undead and Urgathoa's cultists as well as a former undead cultist would. She was also seen in the company of Salim Godafar. It's unlikely the two became friends, being so different from one another, but it's a known fact that they worked together. Octavia didn't stay still for very long. Soon, she and Reg went to Numeria and started a huge slave rebellion there. They didn't manage to destroy the Technic League, but to this day, slaves speak their names with admiration, and slavers with terror. Over the course of their journey, the two grew as close as ever, leaving their quarrels and resentments behind. After returning from Numeria, Octavia settled in her mother's house and became the king's advisor and loyal companion. Rigangar left for Numeria with Octavia to start a slave rebellion. Over the journey, he really matured and learned to understand others, as well as how to control his anger. After he returned, he took a position in the king's court. Being both formidable and charming, he inspired fear in the hearts of some and lust in others. There are even some rumors that he almost talked Octavia into marrying him, and possibly even continuing the Della Fiorni line. Tristan stayed in the Stolen Lands. Endowed with a special blessing of Sarenrae, the priest became known as a great healer and went on to perform many more miracles. I'd say the Movonic Diva deserves the right to rejoin Sarenrae's divine army. I hope the goddess will think the same when Tristan's hour comes and his soul is up for a new judgment. After the war ended, Ekin hung up his bow on the wall and traded the path of the ranger in for the craft of the carpenter. It may not be the most heroic ending to a tragic story like his, but as Torag is my witness, Ekin's happy with it, as is Alina, who became his wife and is bearing his child. Any baby born into this family will be pretty lucky, since the king himself still visits his old friend and will likely become the child's patron. Jubilost returned to the life of a traveling explorer, frequently visiting his favorite kingdom. He said so himself. His famous work studying the First World all opened with a dedication to his longtime companion, the king. Another name was also mentioned, 2Z, my guide and inspiration. Admirers would ask Jubilost many times about this mystery lady, but he would only chuckle, hitch his knapsack on his shoulder, and return to storm the vast expanses of the First World once again. As for Knock Knock, apologies, I mean Hero Knock Knock, he continued his questionably heroic efforts in the Stolen Lands. Despite whatever mess he fell into, no matter the danger he leapt into, he always seemed to scrape through just a little better off than before. Like true heroes, he simply never gave up, struggling on and meeting the challenge of each new day with a spirit that no mishap or misfortune could ever quell. The slightly inaccurate statue of him and the king still stands in the square to this day. The two figures side by side. I've always felt that, while the heights may be a bit off, let's say, it accurately reflects the size and spirit of the goblin hero who'd been nurtured by the teachings of his king. Nyrissa and her beloved king live happily together, setting up the kingdom hand in hand. Their union somehow linked the unruliness of the First World with the order of material plane. Nyrissa managed to bring forth the daring vision for which she had once been cursed, the creation of her dream country. Our kingdom is now a flourishing land, taking the best of both wild nature and structured civilization, and our capital is an amazing garden city, which visitors from all over Galarian come to see. As for myself, the author of this book, Lindsay, who never chose a pretty nickname, I'm still here, inside my creation within the Capitol Library. I live just like I always dreamed, surrounded by people and books, and not a day goes by without someone turning my pages. My story inspired many others to take up the quill. My readers have written many fierce books, articles, and pamphlets, flinging truth in the faces of tyrants. What more could I dream of? I hope, oh honored reader, that this story offered you some daring ideas. Or at least some entertainment. In any case, it's time to set the final period.